In this presentation, we will continue entering cash outflows for the second month of operations from our bank statement into QuickBooks Online. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info. Here we are in our guitar lessons and equipment file. We're going to be entering these in the tab on the left. We're going to the check register into the accounting tab on the left. And then within the accounting tab, we want to be in the chart of accounts. We want to be in the checking account. Within are going to go to the view register so that we can view the register. And then we also want to make sure we have our open items list open. It'll look like this so that we can just jot down the notes that we will have, questions we will have. We're just going to enter those questions and keep pushing forward, even if we don't have the answers. So we compile those questions together and we can ask them all at one time, whether it be our files and we're asking like our accountant to help us out, or if we are entering this information as a bookkeeper to then ask the client. We want to compile all it together and ask at one time. And then we're going to go back to our bank statement, of course, which is here. Last time we left off, we did this one, the Sunlight Rentals. I'm going to highlight that one's done. So last time we've entered the beginning balance, we've entered the additions, and then we've got like halfway through these subtractions or the deductions. That's what we will continue with this time. We're now on this item. We're just entering these directly into the check register. We're going to Verizon. This is one we saw last time, so this one should be an easy one to start off with. We're starting with an easy one here. That's nice. So we're going to go back over here into our check register. We're going to enter a new transaction, drop down new check that we're going to enter, and it's going to be on the 23rd. So I'm just going to say plus. It might have been shorter to type that, but you use the plus on the keyboard helps. And then we're going to say this is check number 1029. So it should be check number 1029. Note the check numbers aren't going to basically be in order all the time. They're not really even going to help us like they would normally because of the fact that we're not entering the data as we write the check, but as they clear the bank. So, and then this is going to be for Verizon. So Verizon, we've seen Verizon before, so we have that vendor, which is great. It's going to memorize the transaction. Note, it's going to give us the last number, and that's for last time, which Verizon bills will probably be different, a telephone bill. But it's good to have that because it'll let us see if there's some huge variance in the phone bill, and then we can kind of question that. So it's nice that it has kind of that feature. We're going to have to change those, however, unless it's going to be exactly the same. And then that's going to go to the telephone, so that's the one we want. So we'll save that one, done and done. Going to go back to our bank statement, highlight that as being completed. Next one is going to be the Edison Electric. So that's another one that should be fairly simple to complete. So we're going to go back up top and say plus, so 224. Check number 1030, that's the one we want. We're going to type in then Edison. We've seen Edison before, so there's the one. The vendor is there, which is nice. We're going to tab through it. Once again, the bill might be the exact, in this case it is the exact same number. That's not always going to be the case, but it can give us that comparison again, which is nice. It's going to the correct account as well, the utilities account, so that looks good. That's what we want. We're just going to say save on this. This is how easy it should be most of the time. Once we get the first month, and at least the first few months, and we get these open items answered. Once that's the case, then entering the data should be pretty straightforward, pretty easy. Even without the bank feeds, we could just go through and just enter this data pretty quickly. And then the next item we're going to have is going to be this taxes. Now that one's unusual, and note that doing this actually is somewhat beneficial as well, because the process of doing this gives you some glance at your data input as you enter it into the system. Whereas if you do the bank feeds and it auto-fills things, you don't really get to just at least go over and glance, the stuff that you're looking at. So this could give you an idea as you go, and again, you could check it too as you go through here. But if you do the bank feeds, that'll save data input time. But again, the same process will be in place. We'll have to assign the proper accounts, and then it'll memorize those accounts after that. And the next few transactions, the next times we do this, it'll be easier. So state tax, that's going to be different. We haven't seen that before. So we're gonna have to ask a question about that one. What is that? It might be a refund or something like that, or it might be a sales tax. Maybe they're paying sales tax or something. So we don't know. So we're gonna say this happened on the 25th, and check number 1033, and they call it state sales tax. It's probably going to be more specific. State, let me type this in here, sales tax. It's probably going to give the state and the sales tax, or the agents that's going to want the sales tax. So if it's, or it is sales tax. It just said state tax. I've got sales tax in my hand. State tax. So if it was sales tax, it would have the agency. If it was the income tax, then it would let us know. It'd probably be the state agency that collects income tax. We'd probably have more detail. We could then research it and see, okay, what does this agency do? And then give a guess as we go to the client and say, this looks like sales tax. Do you have sales tax that we're going to have to deal with? And then we'll have to see how we want to deal with that. So we're going to set this up as a vendor. It's a generic vendor, of course, in the example problem. And we're going to set this up for $300 for the sales tax. And it's going to be the uncategorized account again, uncategorized expense. We'll save that. We're going to put that in our notes. We're going to say, hey, on 02/25, we had a state tax of, this is the vendor, right? This is, so it would really be the tax collector, state tax collector. That's the vendor that we had, and it was for $300. What is this? And it's good if we have a guess. We can say, is it sales tax? Because we can check out whoever the collector is, who the vendor is, and like just browse, search them, Google search, browse, search them, and see what they typically collect in terms of taxes. And then we can have a guess and just then verify that guess. And that shows the client that you're engaged. You're actually thinking about these things as you go. So if next item, we're going to go back over here and say that's the 300. Next item is the Internal Revenue Service. So we wrote a check to the Internal Revenue Service. Now, of course, we probably have a good idea of what that is or have a good guess of it. That's going to be the taxes, that the payments that we're making to the Internal Revenue Service. But we may not know exactly how to record that because it could differ based on the entity. If they're, for example, a sole proprietor, then they're basically have a Schedule C that goes over to their 1040, and they're making those payments then based on their individual tax return. That could be the case if they're an S corporation as well. So we really kind of may not know exactly how to record the tax payment. So we're going to put it into uncategorized for now, and then we might have a question if it's our company to ask our accountant, like how should we do this? How would it help you best at the end of the year to record these payments? Or we might ask the client, what type of entity are you, and what do we need to do that? Or we may just need to do research ourselves and just write a note on it and say, hey, you know, what's the best way for me to record the tax payments? So most likely it's some form of flow-through entity or like a sole proprietor, in which case these are going to be like quarterly payments, where instead of having withholdings from the paycheck, we have to make the quarterly payments, and therefore we'll have to determine from that perspective what to do here. But we'll talk more about that later. We'll just enter it into uncategorized for now, put it in the notes, and then come back to it. So we're not going to let it slow us down here. We're going to say it's on the 226, and the check number is going to be is 1034, Internal Revenue Service. I already typed this in here. So, and then we're going to say that the payment is 1598. So 1598 is the payment. And then we're going to say that the other account is going to be uncategorized expense. So that's the one we want. We're going to save that. And then we're going to go to our notes. And again, this just might be a note for us that we just want to double check this and see what the best way is for us to record this. So we're going to say 1026, we have a payment of $1,598 to the IRS. What type of entity is this? Is it business or personal? Right? These are the type of questions that we would want to know to basically be able to enter this information. Is it business or personal? What type of entity is it? And then basically we can determine from there what the best way to record that expense will be. Again, we'll talk about that more later. So we'll close this out, and then we'll look at the next item. That's going to be this Adam and Rebecca. We saw them before. So now that it's repetitive at the end of the time period, we saw them at the end of the last year, at the last month, and now the end of this month. So we're starting to think, maybe that's payroll or something like that. These two people, maybe they have payroll. So that's starting to be our thought, just basically looking at the pattern. So if we go back over here and enter that data, we're still going to ask that question, but now we might be able to ask it better and be able to intuit a little bit more, which might be able to build some kind of rapport with the client. We'll say, maybe that's payroll. Is that payroll? So that we're going to say 228. This happened. The check number is 1037, and this is going to be Adam. So Adam. And that's going to be for the amount of 3539. Again, it's the same amount. It's repetitive. So the fact that it's the same amount might indicate that it's not like a contractor that's doing work that would be different from time to time. It looks like a standard payment, which would be more of an employee type payment. So we'll say save on that. And we want to be careful too, because if it is a contractor and they look like an employee with standard payments that are being paid, then that might be something that we would indicate. You might want to talk to a tax professional and whatnot to see if you need to be recording them as a employee or as a contractor, because it looks like a set pay, which looks like an employee rather than a contractor. In any case, we're going to go to the next one, and that's going to be on 1038, and this is for Erica. And so we have those two. So we saw those before, same amount. So we'll save that, and then we'll just put a note here. And we'll say that this is on 0228. We have Adam Hamilton and Erica Robertson for the amount of $3,539 and $630 respectively. And now we're starting to guess, is this payroll? Right? Are they employees? And if it's not payroll and they say it's a contractor, then we might want to ask the question and say, hey, maybe that should be payroll, considering the fact that it's the same each time period. Maybe you might want to consider whether or not you're required to have payroll. Again, as the bookkeeper, we don't want to get into the detail of that. That's something, if we're just doing the bookkeeping, that is a tax question. So, but we might be able to inform them on that and say, that might be something you want to just double check on. And then we'll go back over here and say, we have those. And then we have the withdrawal and the bank charges. So the withdrawal is money that was taken out by the owner, again, and we don't know what it's for. It's cash. So if we can convince the owner not to take out just cash withdrawals, we would, because we don't know where to put it. Or we just need the convention. Tell us whatever the draws are. If every time you take a draw out, it's personal, then that's great. I'll just say every time you take a draw out, it's for personal and it's just a normal draw. But if they say the draw is for business related stuff, then we have nowhere to put it. We just have to choose an account. That's the problem with using cash rather than there's no paper trail, which is the point sometimes. But of course, our goal here is to take the paper trail and enter it into the system so we have the proper expense account. So we're going to say the draw. We don't know exactly what to do with that, so we need to get some kind of system set up. So 228 is going to be the draw. Now we might want to put the draw in there as something like not a check. If we use the check field, not a big deal. You just don't use a check number. You just type something out like other into the check. Don't use a check number. Or you can just use something else like an expense type transaction. So we'll use that. We'll go to the expense. So now there's no check number but a reference number. And we don't really have a payee. So it's just going to be a payment of $300. And we could, I think we put draw last time. If you put something like draw, that's not a vendor, of course, but that gives the system something to memorize. So the system could remember, if I cancel this and go add expense, and then we put in draw and add the draw, then it memorized the last one. So that could be useful. It's not really, obviously we didn't pay the draw. You could put the owner's name in there as well. That's not really a vendor as well, but that allows QuickBooks to memorize the other account, which in this case is uncategorized. It's also the same amount of 300. So that looks good. So we'll save that. And then we've got the same question in our notes. We're just going to say on 02/28, there's a draw of 300. Is it business or personal? Right? If business, what account should we expense to? And that's what we don't really know. And then again, if they say it's business, then our question is, well, is there a way that we can not do draws because we can't see them? And if there's not, then we're going to have to just put them into kind of a generic expense account like office supplies or miscellaneous or something like that. So then we'll go back over here and say there's that. The last one, bank service charges. So we'll say this happened on the 28th, and that's pretty straightforward. It's going to be the bank. So I'm just going to say the payment. We won't put the vendor. I'll just say the bank. We could put the bank like Wells Fargo, but there's been a few things that we use that vendor for. So if you assign multiple vendors, you may want to just differentiate the vendors. Like you could put the vendor, if it was Wells Fargo service charges or something, to differentiate the vendor, and that'll help you to basically have a memorized account down here. But to me, it's always the same, really. So it's bank service charge when I see it here. So I'll just say bank charges. That's what we want. And then we'll save that. So that's this last item. And then if we didn't have any problems, then we should have entered this information correctly. And at this point, we can check it, basically, because this should be exact now. So this number was exact. This number we didn't do exact, but if we did it perfectly, it would be exact. And then this number would be exact, and we would be left with this 40,209, and that would be what it is. And then we can go over here and double check that it's not, because we had some problems. So we're going to have to adjust those problems. We'll adjust those problems when we do the bank reconciliation. So if we go over to the reports then, on the report side, and we take a look at the profit and loss, then this is going to be the major report that we've been working in. If we change the dates from 01/01/19 to 02/28/19, that'll be for the full year to date of this time period, and run that report. Now we've got our full expenses at this time. So we're at net income for the year, 24,973, but we've got these huge uncategorized expenses. Now, those may all be expenses, but we got to recategorize it. But notice how this is giving us our number here. It allows us to push forward. It allows us to reconcile, even though we don't know exactly where these go. And we can go ask questions and then go back in here and finish this. If we want to see the net income just for February, we can then change this to February by saying 02/01/19. I could have just changed the 1 to a 2, but run that report. And then here's the February information. So that's what we got there. And and we can look at some comparative reports too as well. We'll take a look at that a little bit in more detail in following presentations. For more accounting information and accounting courses, visit our website at accountinginstruction.info.